Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today it is Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May 2023. It is Friday, TGIF. Welcome into the end of the week or the beginning of the weekend. And today, oh I'm so excited, I get to fix this thing that's been just, you have no idea how much it's bothering me to have built this hot dog. Why is it called a hot dog? Because it was made cheaply and it looks great, but you don't want to see what the ingredients are. You don't want to know what it's made of. So I thought I'd hope for the best by just ordering the cheapest crap I could find on AliExpress and even from Amazon for no-name brand manufacturers. And the stuff from AliExpress was exactly what I expected it to be. Crap, but I thought I could make it work. But I ran out of patience. So instead, I've chalked that up as a $300 lesson learned in the hopes that you're learning with me, so it's my $300, but it's all of our lesson. And I have replaced the motherboard, the CPU, the RAM. The case turns out to be pretty good. However, the same company that makes the case makes coolers, and their coolers suck. In my opinion, and in other reviews, I just figured out this company, ALSEYE, whoever the heck they are, makes junk. Well, it appears they don't make only junk. The case is actually pretty decent, and it was kind of pricey at $150. Wasn't exactly cheap. The cooler was also kind of pricey at $75, and I've got to tell you, you'd be much better off with a Mugen 5 for 2/3 that price. So you'd save 25 bucks, get a better cooler. Well, you'd save $15 anyway, get a better cooler, and forget the RGB. Look at all these cables. Look at all these cables for a cooler. It's ridiculous. So it's been really getting under my skin, and I was really hopeful that cooler was going to work for us. But if you've watched the previous incantation of trying to fix the hot dog, it's just going to cost me more money, of course. That's why I've got this liquid cooler right here. We've got a 13600K in there. Core i5 13600K, and it does get hot, so we're going to need this liquid cooler. I did not know this case was going to be as good as it is. I really intended for this case to be, I thought it was going to be junk based on the other stuff this company makes. So I was surprised, and I like to be surprised when it's a good surprise. This case has room for like two 360 millimeter radiators in it. Of course, I only need the one. And as for a graphics card, we can put any graphics card in this we want. There's no limitation. So to make this a full gaming PC, any graphics card will work in here as long as it's a PCI Express graphics card. So it's really up to your budget to allow for it. Our power supply is going to cover it no matter what. The power supply is decent. It's made by a company called GameMax. I've never heard of them. So we're still going to use the same cheap power supply and the cheap case that wasn't so cheap. But everything else was a complete waste of time and money because it's all being recycled to be replaced with quality components. Z690 Aorus motherboard from Gigabyte, the previously mentioned Intel i5 13600K CPU. We've got some G.SkillTridentZRoyalSeries RAM. It's really high quality RAM with the RGB. It's way overpriced. I don't recommend you buy it unless you care more about having top of the line, because that stuff's top of the line. Top shelf. And apparently this case allows for a vertical mount of the GPU, but I cannot find what is compatible for a GPU vertical mount extension cable. So if any of you out there do the research and look up this ALSEYE case, let me know if you find the GPU extension cable, and I will mount a GPU in here vertically. Every case I've had that offers a vertical GPU mount, I have never been able to find a compatible GPU extension cable. So like the Cougar case, the Conquer case, the Antec Torque case, I think also had I cannot find the cable that's necessary, and I don't see one being offered by any of the manufacturers. I've seen some videos where people are sort of hodgepodging it, and it's not good enough for me. If you're not going to do it right, don't bother. But if there is a proper compatible GPU extension cable, I will put the GPU in vertically. I just cannot find it, and I haven't had a lot of time to look. Let me give a few shouts out to some very generous members in our chat room today. And I'm going to come over here to my tablet so I can see the chat room. And first of all, thank you to Buster, Peter Laycock, joining us from Scotland. Do you know Peter's last day of work for life? He's retired. Congratulations. It was today or yesterday is retired. He's officially, you know, he's had that job since he was in his teens, I think, or early 20s. You know, finding people and finding employers that keep their people and treat them well for decades so that you can retire from a company 30 plus years later, very unusual. So congratulations and a well-earned break for our friend Buster out there in Scotland. Well done, my friend. Maybe one day I'll retire. I kind of already am. All right. And Peter also very generously contributed before the show, and thank you, of course, for that as always. Dustin Fuller has now been a member for 11 months. And he says, hello, Carey, Camera Girl, and all in chat. Hey, Dustin, thank you for supporting the channel. All those familiar names in blue, welcome in. I'm going to just scroll through here quickly. There's our good friend Buster again with a 10-pound contribution. He says, good evening, Carey and Marlena and everyone in the chat. I wish you all the best from Scotland. We should go out to Scotland.
We totally should. We need to.
We have an appointment for passport, right? We got to get passports.
We do.
All right. Ben Laird, also from Scotland, contributes £5. A lot of Scottish friends in our audience today. That's awesome. Planet Cryos contributes $2 and says, just saying hi. Davis Parsons has now been a member for 11 months. He says, 11 months and 22 days, finally made it to a live chat session. No hot dog builds on my end. Thank you so much, Davis. Right on. That number's going to change, that little badge with the 6. The next one you see for Davis is going to be a 12. Sounds like you're about 8 days or 9 days away from that. There's another great friend of the channel, Jack Wilson, who contributes $50 in Super Chat. And Jack says, hey, hello everyone in the chat and to our lovely camera girl. Right on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
I still got to get Jack's computer shipped out. I didn't get it done this week. Next week, promise. Steve Mercure saying congratulations on retirement, and Thomas Backenstow also, and Vern Mahorny. Look at all the love Buster's getting in the chat room. Now, listen, the rule is, Buster, you only retire once. Okay. You know, how many times have bands said, we're done, and then they go back on tour a year later? Alvin Shaver contributes $5 and says, I hope everyone's having a great day. Charlie Beamer says his son lives in Scotland. Right on. I'm really close to Scottsdale. Does that count? Matt Olaf says, hello, camera lady.
Hi, Matt.
Jason Wyrick says, or NFL quarterbacks. Yeah, how many times has Tom Brady retired? I forgot. Luke Slater says he wants to visit there. He's been to Glasgow a few times. John Wilson, our friend Jack, says, wow, I did it all wrong. I'm retired now from 3 jobs. Well, the third time's the charm. Just took you a while to get it done right. Ron Barnish says, I retired and went back for 4+ years. See, this is what happens. Thomas Backenstow says, hello, camera girl from Pennsylvania.
Hi, Thomas.
And Jason Ryder says, Brett Favre has also retired several times. Yeah. But they get hit in the head a lot, so they might have forgot. You know, NFL. Thomas get transformed into a filet mignon build.
I was going to do that in the thumbnail.
Yeah. Of course, Camera Girl is also the one making these amazing thumbnails, so thank you so much. There's our good friend Mark Gaines with a 10-pound contribution in Super Chat. And Mark joins us from the UK. He says, Carey, check your email. All right, we'll get this checked out before we get started here. Oh, an Amazon gift card for $25. Thank you so much, Mark. Your generosity, your continued generosity is very much appreciated. These contributions are never expected, but they're always appreciated, and I always want to give a shout out to anybody who shows such generosity and support to the channel. So thank you, or cheers, as the case may be. All right, now, getting to work. Should we get to work? I've already removed this crappy cooler. $75 for this hunk of junk. So many things wrong with this cooler. First of all, it doesn't cool very well. Secondly, it's got proprietary fans. So if, not if, but when one of the fans dies, good luck finding the replacement. I don't even know how the fans hook in because somewhere the connector is buried underneath this plastic housing. This is all about looks. It's not about performance. And they're charging top dollar with a very high profit margin, I suspect. This couldn't cost more than $30 to make it. So they're making a much higher profit margin than, let's say, ALSEYE is making on the Mugen 5, which actually does the job of cooling, uses a standard fan, uses only one cable to plug in, not four. Of course, they do have an RGB version that you can buy, or you can put an RGB fan on if you really want to, but that's still only 2 cables. This is ridiculous with the number of number of cable connections you've got to make with it. And as I mentioned, the fan design is the deal killer for me, because how do I support this? When the time comes that one of these fans needs to be replaced, where do I get it from? And how much time is it going to take? Basically, instead of just swapping out a fan on a cooler, which is a 2-minute job and very inexpensive to buy a fan, these fans, they can charge anything they want to because they're the only ones who make them. You've got to color match it or it's not going to look right, because after all, it's all about the looks. You've got to take the cooler off, remove the plastic housing, and do you have to do any soldering? I don't know. I haven't opened it up to that level, but it's a hot dog. It's not nutritious. It's not good for you. It is all about making it look good, taking all these extra pieces of meat left over, grinding them up, adding a bunch of seasoning and coloring so they're all uniform texture and flavor, and then shaping it into a more appealing look and a more appealing taste. It's not necessarily bad for you. It's not going to kill you, but it is kind of disgusting. So these parts, this is the original board I got from AliExpress with their ERYING branded RAM and ERYING branded SSD. Now the RAM and SSD are pretty standard, as long as you don't want any support, as long as you understand that if anything breaks or if there's any problems, you have nobody to go to and there's no one to complain to. The FTC is not enforcing any rules. You voluntarily went outside of the FTC by purchasing directly from China, and you get what you get. Enjoy your gamble. I run a business and I can't use my customers as guinea pigs and expect to stay in business very long. So for that reason, this is a very bad decision to use parts from AliExpress. It's absolutely worth a few more dollars to get the parts at Amazon, because when I order this from Amazon, I have 30 days to return it hassle-free and a full refund, and it doesn't cost me any money to ship it back. If I didn't like the case, I could ship it back. If I didn't like any of the things I bought from Amazon, power supply included, I have 30 days to return it to Amazon. AliExpress, it's a one-way shipment. There's no sending it back. You get what you get. And if you enjoy gambling and you have the money to burn, have at it. However, if you're just trying to get by and you're barely making ends meet, so you're trying to get more for your dollar, you're not. That's all an illusion. It's a hot dog, all right? Hot dogs are very inexpensive. It's not better than, say, a regular old everyday cut of meat, or, you know, it's obviously going to cost you more for a nice cut of meat than it's going to cost you for a hot dog, which is made of all the leftovers. These parts at AliExpress are mostly all just kind of like leftovers. That's why they're so, partially why they're so inexpensive. Also, support costs a lot of money, so if a company isn't going to offer you any support, they can save a ton of money. So you get what you pay for. Or in this case, you're not getting what you're not paying for, which is support, peace of mind for returning, and as far as I'm concerned, quality. There's no, unless you spell quality with a K, it's not my definition of quality. So if you're looking for something to do as a challenge, you want to play around with something that's difficult to get working, congratulations, this will be a lifetime of work. It'll never be done. It'll always have a problem, and some people enjoy the challenge. But do set your expectations accordingly, because I hate when people cry out as a victim when they subverted all the protections that are in place by the FTC for Americans when they're making purchases, because they think they're getting a good deal somewhere else. That good deal is not what it appears. XRod666 contributes $10. He says, hello, Carey, long time no see. That's a cool looking case, but would not want to own it. Well, first of all, thank you for the $10 super chat. Good to see you again, my friend. So what I did is I've taken this cooler off and I purchased the Thermaltake Ultra 240, the Tough Liquid Ultra 240 liquid cooler. And what I'm thinking is I want to put the radiator here in the front, and I'll put the fans this way to bring air into the system. And we also have room to put the radiator up top if we wanted to, but I think it'll look better up front. I wanted a cooler that was all black. I don't want any RGB on the cooler because this case has enough RGB and it's very, very bright. I think adding any more is just over the top. So with the RAM having RGB and with the case having RGB, that's good enough. And if we throw a video card, we can decide to get an RGB video card if we want to. And then finally, I wanted the cooler to have a screen on it like I have over here on the streamer, where there's a little monitor and I could have my logo or anything, you know, temperatures displayed on that screen. So I initially wanted an NZXT Kraken, which is what's in here, but they're a month behind on shipping those. And I didn't want to wait a month to finish this hot dog. So this I could get the next day or within 2 days off Amazon. It's $200 for this cooler, which makes this cooler seem cheap by comparison. However, I predict this cooler will not cause our CPU to overheat like this one did. So you get what you pay for. I've never used Thermaltake's. In fact, I didn't even know they made a cooler with a LCD screen on it. I know Corsair, his NZXT sort of came out with it, Corsair's copied it, and now Thermaltake has apparently copied it. And I'm interested to see how Thermaltake has implemented how we can configure the screen. And I've had very good luck with Thermaltake products in the past, so yeah, it's not like I'm buying from an unfamiliar brand. I will say, I don't know about Thermaltake coolers, but I mean, I'm seeing a ton of 15-year-old Thermaltake power supplies still in the wild, still being used today. So if that's any indication, as well as their cases, I've got a lot of familiarity with Thermaltake cases, and they're all built like tanks, very thick steel, and you know, in many of their cases, I could stand on them and they would support my weight. I don't know why I'd want to, but many cheaper cases, this one's actually pretty good, but many cheaper cases, if I stood on it, it would just collapse it. So having that means it's more sturdy, it's going to be a bit heavier, it's going to withstand a bit more being rough with it over the course of I've had a little bit of a drop in the internet there, so hopefully it's not going to be one of those days. It looks like I've come back, but if it just buffered on your side, that was because of my upload connection for some reason. Let me just take a quick look here in the chat before we get started. Artemios in the chat room says, it's not only the price issue with AliExpress, oftentimes there's a real language barrier that makes communication harder, even when your supplier does want to help you. So it's a real gamble. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely true. Scott says hello, Carey and Mara. Hey, Scott, welcome in.
Hi, Scott.
Thomas MacT says he's retired for 29 years. Good going. Hope your health is holding up. That's a long time to be retired. Did you retire at the age of 25? How'd that work out? I should have done that. Luke Slater wants to know, what's the point of the SATA cable? Doesn't the fans get power from the 4-pin and the LCD get power from the USB? I have the same question. I have exactly the same question. Apparently, it's drawing too much power to power 2 fans from 1 fan connector which is, you know, sort of a no-no anyway. The power draw on that is not what the motherboards are designed for. Clearly, the power cable has got to be used for the RGB and the liquid crystal temperature display or LED temperature display. The USB is to report the temperature. The temperature display on the top of this cooler doesn't work unless you plug the USB in, and the RGB won't work unless you plug the SATA power in, and the fans won't work unless you plug the CPU fan header in. And what's the fourth one? Which one am I forgetting? Oh, this is the ARGB cable, which won't synchronize your RGB with the rest of your RGB unless you use the ARGB. Otherwise, it's just going to go through a regular sequence of colors. So if you want your motherboard and your fans to all change colors together or to move in a pattern, they've got to communicate with each other, and that's what the ARGB cable is for. Ah, totally worth it. All right, let me move the garbage out of the way. I'm going to get this off the desk because something smells in here, and I'm pretty sure it's that. Now, I've done no research on this. I'm not reading any directions on this. I'm going to open this up for the very first time. We're going to experience this together. I will refer to the directions if I have to. I would prefer not to. One other thing I forgot to mention about this piece of junk is the mounting process on this is preposterous and stupid. I went to turn this bracket around and I cannot get the bracket to stay in by myself. I need somebody else to hold it because the little plastic washer that's supposed to hold this little piece in keeps falling out on one particular corner, which defeats its whole purpose. Furthermore, they're trying to have like a one-size-fits-all design, so the installation is very confusing because it can be installed one of 8 different ways, depending on which CPU socket you have, whether it's one of 4 different Intel sockets or one of 3 or 4 different AMD sockets. They're trying to, you know, have one cooler that rules them all, but it just plain sucks. There's no better word for it. Don't waste your money. It's all about the looks. It's not about performance. I don't know why anybody would reasonably buy that cooler if they take cooling their CPU seriously. It's like you're prioritizing lights. You know, you can go to the store, you can buy a lamp. And if you like the crazy lights, you could buy a lava lamp. At the end, it'll last you longer. There'll be no troubleshooting and less cable management.
Disco ball.
You can get a disco ball too. Or you can get like a string of LEDs with a mirror behind it and have an infinity light. Have at it. All right, so should we put Camera Girl to work?
Sure.
Adib Ali says he's building another computer tomorrow. He's going to use a B560 HD3 with a Core i7 11700K with 32 gigs of RAM, 500 gig, and Samsung 970 Evo Plus NVMe, using the Be Quiet PureBase 500 case and an EVGA 600 watt for power supply. All good components there. Yeah, it should be a good system. And using an 11th gen instead of a 13th gen processor, it's going to save you some money, and it's still a fast processor. All right, let me just take this down for a second because it's stealing my spotlight. And let's get to the case here. All right, Camera Girl, are you ready?
Ready.
Close-up camera, activate. Okay, you're good. Come on over. There we go. All right, so this is the Thermaltake Tough Liquid Ultra 240. Never used one before. Didn't even know they made this. But I like that there's no RGB on it and it's going to be all black. And I like the black and white combination, sort of a stormtrooper theme. And if I can figure out how to open the box, it'd be a great place to get started, wouldn't it? And I'm going to adjust my tablet over here. All right, so we've got some documentation. We've got Oh, this is interesting. It's like they exposed the bearing for some reason. These fans are kind of heavy. Wow. We've got our mounting kit here, which includes the thumb screws and the back plate and the necessary cabling, which includes requiring a USB cable so we can put a graphical image onto the screen. I was curious how tall the water pump was. I mean, we're not going to have a problem with fitting it, but it did seem in the pictures to be awfully thick. Oh yeah, it is pretty thick. Look at that. That's massive. But that's okay. That brings that screen closer to the edge of the case, so it's not so buried in there. And then there's the radiator. It's already pre-filled, ready to plug in. It does have a fill port, but it's already filled. There's nothing you need to do there. And that's all that is in this box. So I will put this box over here. Now, this cooler, this one over here, I need to get this out of my way, and it's making me nauseous looking at it. And look at all the parts that I have to keep together with it. Now, will I reuse it in something that's, you know, maybe an i3 or a Celeron? It seems like it would just, I don't know. This should stand as a scar, just to remind you of the mistakes you've made. And there's the back plate. Thankfully, I've got two hands. Bear with me just a second. I'm gonna put this over here with the rest of the junk. That was a complete waste of money, except for the educational value, which I hope was conveyed to you. All right, in the mounting kit bag, let's see what we have here. Some screws, 3 different back plates, holy cow, that's bizarre. Standoffs, thumb screws, USB cable. Why is there 2? I don't know. More screws, more back plate, thermal compound, and a fan splitter. All right. Well, I've been spoiled by Scythe. This is a more complicated setup than I was hoping for, but that's okay. We've got all day. So taking a look at the instructions, I like that there is just pictures. One for Intel installation, one for AMD installation. And then on the back side, I think this is about the software. Yeah. Which I'm hoping I can change the image on. But if not, you know, that's fine too. Pretty sure. Yeah, it says you can upload a picture. So we can put the spinning cube on it or whatever we want to put on there within size limitation. All right, so for the Intel installation, this is going to be an LGA 1700. So I don't know the difference between these two. They look very similar. One is LGA 1700, one is LGA 1200. And then this weird one that's split, this is for AMD sockets. So we're not going to use that. We'll put that back in the bag. Just going to try and reduce the number of parts on the table so it doesn't look so intimidating and it won't take me so long to find what I need. And yeah, so one of these is LGA 1700 and one is LGA 1200. And it says, oh, it says right on it, if you can zoom the camera in. It says 115X right there. And this one says LGA 1700 right there. Now, LGA 115X is also the same as LGA 1200. And the X after the 5 is any number of Intel socket, like 1150, 1151, 1156. That's X as a variable. It's nice they've got some tape. Remember I mentioned that other one would keep falling off. This will at least hold it in place. It's kind of a strange way to do that. But since we don't need the 115X, that will go back in. So now we're reducing our number of parts that we're going to need. We will absolutely need these standoff, these thumb screws rather, and we need either these standoffs or these standoffs. I'm not quite sure which one it is. It looks like, for LGA 2066, do the bags have any markings to tell us which one's which? They do not. Normally, the LGA 20 series sockets have this wide mounting point that you screw into. So I'm going to guess these silver standoffs are likely for like the Xeon processors, the 2000 series sockets. I'm going to guess these black ones here are likely the ones we need for today. So let me grab some scissors and open that up and just verify my thought on that. So first of all, we're going to need these standoffs, or sorry, these thumb screws that have the little springs. You use those on all CPUs regardless. These little clips are typically used, if I recall correctly, with AMD. So I'm going to put these in this bag of unused parts. And then I think these are the standoffs we need. And the way I can tell is normally the short end would go down into the backplate. And that is the correct one. These other standoffs basically have the same size thread on both sides. In this size, this won't go in. The diameter of the screw is wider than the hole. So that is pretty common. And then this bag of screws here, we've got these long screws and these shorter screws. This is for mounting the radiator to the case. So all we need for our install you know what? It looks like I made an incorrect. It looks like this piece actually fits around the water block. I thought this was an AMD bracket. Am I half right? So basically, this piece slides on like this. And this back plate right here, I've got to guess this is the AMD back plate here. I guess. Well, we'll figure it out. All right, let me move some of this out of the work area. So again, I'm looking at documentation right here, and we're just paying attention to the center panel. That's the entire installation guide right there. So let me put the computer case back up on the counter. And we'll move all of this aside for a moment, including that. We don't need that yet. And we can start by installing the back plate. So if I turn this around so you guys can see, I'm going to come over to where you guys are. So we're going to start, first of all, just want to make sure that we're going to go in the proper orientation. It's going to go this way. And that tape is going to stick to the back of the CPU plate, not to the back of the motherboard. And I like that the tape is there because that means I can do this without help. I mean, in theory, I don't need both sides of the tape. One side will hold it in place, but I don't plan on ever taking it off, so just align that. I think I've had too much caffeine today, a little shaky. Look, it stays in place. Just think if that other piece of crap cooler had done something that simple, I wouldn't have struggled with putting it back on. But that's okay, it didn't cool worth a darn anyway, so. So with that in, we turn this back around. And then we'll put the, what do they call these? Those are like standoffs here with the short end that goes in to hold the socket in, or the, this goes in to hold the back plate in. Trying to get all the right terminology. It's a lot of words. It's too many words. Put that one there. Now, normally you would have your case laying flat to do this, but that doesn't really make for a good video for you guys if you can't see what I'm doing inside. So do keep that in mind, and I still have thermal compound left over on here I've got to clean off before I mount the water block to it. Sometimes there are washers or things that go between the standoff, depending on the cooler manufacturer, so just be aware of that. When they do say, when manufacturers have a similar installation process, they like to sue each other. So it's not that necessarily that they're doing something different because they think it's better. I mean, they could think it's better. They probably think it's better. But the reason there's no uniform way to do it is they don't want to pay royalties to somebody. It comes out of their profit, or they have to charge more for the product, which makes them less competitive in the marketplace to the consumer that's, you know, buying based on price, which is what a lot of consumers do. And these you just tighten with your fingers. There's a reason why. There's not a bolt shape to them. You cannot get a wrench around them for that reason. They don't want you to. So as far as you can turn it with your fingers, sometimes you gotta wiggle them a little bit as you turn them to just make sure you're getting fully seated. There is a little bit of play, and that is normal because when we put the water block on, it's gonna pull it towards, it's gonna sandwich it between the board and the bottom of the water block. And that's what you want it to do to have proper pressure applied to the top of your CPU heat spreader. Okay, all right. So far, all of this is super easy. I'm digging it. Now, when it comes to putting in this radiator, here's what I'm thinking. Let me just visualize this here. Visualize it with me. I'm thinking I want the hoses at the top. I want the fans on the other side blowing air through the radiator. And then this piece, our water block, we put it on with the, let me see here. With the hoses either to the right, as long as they're not going to interfere with the RAM, and this motherboard has given us good space there. Or for looks, we might want to rotate that. One thing's for sure, we can only mount it horizontally or vertically depending on what the bracket's going to allow us to do, which I haven't figured out yet. And I just realized this whole piece turns, so you don't have to worry about your screen being upside down. That's a great idea. NZXT makes you use the software to turn the image. This makes way more sense to me. That's obviously where the USB cable is going to go to control the image and monitor the temp. And then this is going to plug into the CPU fan header on the motherboard right up there. And I want to see what the bracket looks like that goes on there. Is there one? Look at the directions again. Oh, I think I've put the wrong bracket on. I think the bracket with just the two holes is the AMD bracket. And the other bracket, I see, is for Intel. That makes way more sense now that I've had time to think about it. So this one, we're just going to slide this off. This is, the instructions weren't clear to me. This is for AMD socket, so the two screws. But I have seen, like the Scythe Mugen 5 will use two screws. Heck, even that cooler we replaced uses two screws on the Intel socket. Hence my confusion, my error. And then as far as this goes, I don't think it matters which side goes up. We're just going to slide that on. That makes more sense. And then that way, that's going to go right over these standoffs. Check this out. When we mount the radiator, then the next step we could, heck, we could even put it in like that, have the hose be on top. And then those springy thumb screws will go on top like that. Oh, that's going to look fantastic. See, you can have it look good and work well at the same time. You don't have to buy something based on looks only. You can get both. All right, so that makes more sense to me now. It's all coming together. And I guess I can use this time to clean the thermal compound residue off of the top of the heat sink, or off of the top of the heat spreader, rather. And what am I missing in the chat room here? Alan Lindos contributes $7.77, says, so here's my late fee. Hey, I love it when people are late. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, so I made some incorrect assumptions here. Obviously, these videos are live and unscripted, and I'm figuring it all out as I go. But nothing we've done is harmful or anything like that. And, you know, if you like to watch scripted and edited content, there's plenty of that here on YouTube. This more emulates a real user experience, end user experience, because I know I get the calls from the end users. And I think I'm slowly becoming one. All right, here we go. Get some isopropyl alcohol here on this Q-tip. So I'm not wiping off the alcohol to dry it. It'll evaporate on its own. But while it's wet, I'm trying to get up the residue while it's still wet. And then I will repeat this until no more residue or very little residue comes off. So I will go horizontally and I will go vertically and then go in circles, whatever it takes. And even though it looks like I've cleaned it, and you can see there's still more coming off. And then I've got some on the bracket, so I'll clean that while I'm here. You see, that's still pretty dirty. I'll do one more, just to be excessive. A little bit of excess. I kind of feel like I owe it to the CPU. I put it through a lot of unnecessary torture. And then just let that evaporate dry. I think I need more caffeine. Fatal Dragons contributes $10 in Super Chat. Carey, unfortunately, I have to send my Asus graphics card back to Asus for repair. Do you have a video or any guide or advice on how to pre-package the card to minimize damage? Thank you for your time. Well, when you fill out an RMA from any manufacturer, they're going to tell you they want that packed in an anti-static bag and to have 2 inches of cushioning across the front, back, top, bottom, all 6 sides, right? So left and right, forward and backward, up and down. 2 inches. And whether that 2 inches is bubble wrap, or it could be packing peanuts as long as the graphics card is installed in an anti-static bag. Now, Asus typically doesn't repair graphics cards. So if it's damaged going to them, except for the excuse to not honor your warranty because you didn't package it right, it doesn't really change what they're going to do, which is to take a B stock unit essentially and send you a new one. So Asus doesn't make anything. Asus engineers the designs and they contract out the manufacturing to the cheapest manufacturer for a certain number of units, and then there's a cost per unit. And the manufacturer has to follow Asus's engineering design and required parts. That doesn't always happen in some, that's why we had the capacitor plague. But that's behind us. There's a position called an actuary, and their job is to determine approximately how many units will come back for warranty during the warranty period and to build or have manufactured that many extra units. As I mentioned, they typically don't repair them. They typically will sell them to a refurbisher, and then the refurbisher may list them as refurbished if they repair them. The refurbisher's job is to then take support from that point forward if they sell it, and you'll find it. Sometimes Amazon or eBay offers refurbished parts, whether that's a motherboard. I see Best Buy offering refurbished solid-state drives, whatever that means. But the warranty is no longer covered by the manufacturer on a refurbished part. So when you send an item back for RMA these days, whether it's a router, a motherboard, a video card, a solid-state drive, you typically will get back a new unit, sometimes even in a retail box. And whatever remains of your warranty is still in play. So if you had a 3-year warranty and it's 2 years old and something goes wrong and you send it in and then they send you back a replacement, your warranty doesn't start over again. You just have what's ever left over. It's still the same warranty in play. Same expiration date applies. But do read the packaging instructions. Every manufacturer is very specific about how you must pack your item, and if you fail to do that correctly, they will not honor the warranty. But in general, it's 2 inches when shipping electronic items around the entire device. The device must be in an anti-static bag. You don't have to put the little plastic covers back on the PCI Express slot or any of that nonsense. And you don't need to send back the instructions or a driver disk, just the unit itself, just the piece of hardware. You will want to print out a copy of your RMA authorization code and include that in the box. So when the person at the warehouse opens the box, even though you should be putting your RMA number right on the address, which again, Asus will instruct you to do. Any manufacturer, it's pretty much always the same. It's an additional benefit to have a copy of your authorization. Just print out the email and put it in the box with the thing you're returning. And then when you ship it, it doesn't matter if you want to ship USPS or UPS or FedEx or DHL. All that matters is you get a tracking number. So you can ship USPS and get a tracking number. It's probably the cheapest way. Or even priority mail. I think all priority mail by default comes with a tracking number. You don't need a signature release or anything like that. It's just that if they say they didn't get it, that's your insurance to show that officially it was sent and it arrived. It's all pretty standard stuff, no big deal. And then it probably will take about a week for them to receive it after you mail it. And then it'll probably take them 2 or 3 days to process it. And then they'll send you another one at their expense, and you'll get that about a week later. So the whole ordeal should take about 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks is pretty average. And it's really not a big deal. But don't expect them to fix it. Expect that you're probably going to get a new one. Now, if for some reason they have run out, so that, you know, when they do their manufacturing, they do a whole big batch of them because it costs less to build 10,000 units than to build 9,000 units. The price per unit is cheaper the more you make. But they also don't want to be, 4 years down the road or 3 years down the road, whatever the warranty expires, they don't want to be stuck with all this B stock that they have to unload, and it's a financial loss for them. So for some reason, they have run out of replacement graphics cards of the exact make and model that you have. You will get the equivalent make and model that they have in stock or better. So in other words, you may not get the same card back. Our good friend Madi, for example, had the blower style graphics card, and it was making some whining noise or something, and he sent it back. I think this was to EVGA when they were making video cards. And EVGA sent him back an axial fan graphics card. It's the same model, the same amount of RAM, but Madi wanted the blower style. Well, they didn't have the blower style, and they don't fix the video cards. And the contract of the warranty is pretty universal amongst all manufacturers that states you will get either the same make and model back or something equivalent or something better than what you originally sent. And they don't make any promises that you're going to get the exact same model back for that very reason. They're not going to just call the factory up and have them manufacture one unit for you. That would cost a ton of money. That's how that works. Not a big deal. I've already made tons of stuff over the years and pretty painless. Jason Wyrick says, I'm half tempted to just take a mini PC and throw it in temporarily. Hey, these mini PCs are super value, man. I think I'm going to make a sub-channel, another channel here on YouTube, and it's just going to be mini PC review videos. So I'll take all the ones I've already done, and I'll upload them in 4K over to the other channel. And we'll just call it Mini PC Reviews channel. And that's all that'll be, even going back to the original Nook mini PC that I built in 2013, and maybe even include some mini ITX builds in there. Why not? And just kind of separate that content out. It'll still be here too, but I try to attract more search results. Okay, so that's definitely dry by now. Mounting the radiator. So I need to take the front of this off. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. I think, and I've got to be careful because there is some wiring here. So if I pull the front bezel off, I don't want to yank it off with a lot of force and potentially damage the wiring. So I think I just grab it from underneath here and start to pull it. I don't see any screws holding it in. There it goes. You want to be careful that you don't bend this up or sideways and break the clips because they're plastic. And after that, you're going to be using glue and duct tape. There's the cabling I was talking about right there. I'm trying to figure out where I can put this. Just set it right over. This is difficult for me to do for the camera. For the benefit of the camera, my work is twice as hard.
Want to go back to your main camera?
Maybe. Let me just try and figure out what I'm doing here. Yeah, I think I will go back to the main camera. Thank you. We will utilize the close-up camera again here in a moment. You're done. You're clear, I mean. All right, so Luke says you must be getting tired by now holding that the whole time.
Nah. I got lots of energy.
All right, so now if I want to put this in, I want the hoses to come off from the top. And I can place this, I can bring it further down, I can put it right in the middle. I'm going to just set that there for now, and we'll grab one of the fans. Doesn't matter which fan we use first, they're both exactly the same. I cannot get over how heavy these are. Why are they so heavy? Looks like we've got some protection on here. There we go. Here's one. There's the other one, right. Come on. Right. There it is. All right, let's get this out of here. And then with the bag of screws, remember I mentioned there were this bag right here has the long screws and the shorter screws. We need to get into that and get those long screws out. And we want these long screws because what we're going to do here with these long screws is we're going to go through this fan. Right, we're going to go through here. And it's going to go through these long slots in the case, and it's going to screw into the radiator. It's going to sandwich the fan. It's going to sandwich the front of the case between the fan and the radiator. So we only need half as many screws. So far, I'm not hating it. Thermaltake's doing a pretty good job with this mounting technique. I'll give them kudos for that. You know, like I said, they've got to be different, and sometimes in being different, things get more complicated than they really need to be in order to avoid somebody wanting to sue you for royalties for stealing their mounting technique. Why do I only have 3? Where did the 4th one go? Oh, it's over here. Okay. All right, let me get back to, let's see. Make sure my torque setting is super low because I don't want to strip out the radiator. It's made of soft metal, and if you tighten the screws too tight, you'll rip right through the, you'll strip out the head. Not the head, you'll strip out the thread of the, in the radiator. And you don't want to use screws that are too long on this Thermaltake because you'll drive the screw right into the radiator, right into the fins. So that's why it's important that you notice the screw doesn't stick out very far on this. See how short that's going to go into the radiator? Very, very short. I think they could have made that a little longer. We're only going to get a couple turns out of this. Let's see. How is this going to align? So because it's a 240 and not a 280, the 280 would use the outside holes. We're going to use the inner holes. And I'm almost afraid to use the cordless driver on it. Can you come here for a second? I could use your extra hands. And let's see, which way do I want to rotate this? I think we'll run the cable right through that hole there. And you know what? I'm kind of scared to use this electric driver. I'm going to grab my manual screwdriver. So that way I don't strip it out. So what I would like you to do is to hold this fan about right there for me. So is that where I want it to go? Yeah, that looks good. And then what I'll do is I'll start this screw here and then align the radiator on the other side. You're going to have to move your finger. Thank you. And now I've got to find where the mounting hole is, which I think is right there. This part is a little more complicated, unfortunately. Once again, be better off laying the case down to work on it And I realize you're probably not getting much of a view anyway, but the idea is for me to do it this way so you can see. I'm having some trouble getting this lined up. There is not much as far as a thread goes. Do wish those screws were a little bit longer. You'll also notice the orientation of the fan. This part here is the part that brings air in, and the other side with the support brackets is the side the air goes out. That's how we know we're drawing air in and through the radiator with that orientation. And I'm going to try this again. Hey, found it. Now, let me do the opposite corner, so you have to move that hand. And this one should line up a lot easier now that I have one in there. I have to make it through the fan first. There we go. Apparently not aligned correctly here. I'm off by a little bit. Yeah, Thermaltake should have made those screws about 1/4 of an inch longer. Well, that's more difficult than it needs to be. Let me try the other part down here. Okay, you can let it go. Thank you. All right, so I don't know why the bottom ones are going in and the top ones don't seem to reach. That is weird. What it appears to be are the cushions. These little anti-vibration dampeners are adding a little bit of thickness to the fan. And so what I have to do is kind of push in on the screw to push that dampener in order for the screw to reach to the radiator. I mean, they're just long enough. And don't tighten these down too much. We absolutely want them to be not falling out, but they don't have to be airtight or anything. They, you know, it shouldn't have to be difficult to... they shouldn't be turned so tight. Like I said, you'll strip the soft metal out of the mounting point of the hole. And then the shorter screws we won't use. And then I'll put the last fan on here. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't use the electric drill for that. Or the electric screwdriver, I should say. And I think that one will go like that. And that'll keep our cabling together. Yeah, I don't think I'm aligned properly there. If you're struggling with one, just skip it, come back to it, go to the next one. Because by putting the others in, it'll help keep that radiator aligned and also brought forward to the front of the case because these screws are so short. We really need every millimeter we can get to bring these two items closer together. Try this one now. Now that I've had a minute. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing the radiator forward. I don't know how well you can see that case is bowing. And that's what I have to do to make these barely long enough screws reach to the radiator. I'm kind of on the fence if I should lower this. Feels like it's a bit high. I guess it doesn't matter because the cover is going to keep it covered up anyway. I definitely want airflow to blow through the radiator and over the GPU here. So it's up to you where you want to position it. I definitely could go a little bit lower though. And, you know, just out of curiosity, if I loosen the screws without taking them out entirely, I wonder how far I can slide the radiator while the screws stay in the same mounting slot. Push down on the radiator. Have I already hit the bottom? Yeah. So that's about as much movement as I'm going to get out of it. It looks like I'm hitting the bottom of this slot here, even though I've got room to move here. And again, it's just an aesthetic. If I wanted the fans more centered, I could lower it. On the other hand, the higher up these hoses are, the better, because the more likely I can get them out of view, especially if I want to put the radiator in this way. Think about that, just to visualize what that'll look like. That's with the hoses connected at the top, because if we run the hoses almost any other direction, like we could go this way, now the hoses are going to kind of cover up the screen going that way. If we go with the hoses on the bottom, the way Thermaltake shows it in their advertising, the hoses still cover up the screen partially. And then the last direction we haven't tried would be putting it towards the radiator. So the hoses are going to be towards the RAM, which is the way I've installed a lot of other water blocks. Oh, you know what? That actually looks pretty good that way. I like the natural flow of the hose. It's not going to block anything. I think that's going to be our orientation right there.
That looks perfect.
I think so, yeah. Good to know. So I'll go ahead and tighten these fans back down since that's a good position for the radiator. It's not just about the looks, it's also about the flexibility of the hoses and what route those hoses have to take, whether or not they're going to block any of your looks of your case, right? Like blocking the RGB RAM, or in some cases blocking a socket where you can't use the memory socket closest to some water blocks depending on the motherboard design and the water block design. So once again, I don't want these too tight. And the electric driver would have been too much. So that seems just about perfect. Look at that. So when I put the block on, well, first I'm going to have to put thermal compound, and then I'm going to use these little thumb screws with the springs on them. And that's going to mount right to the surface of the CPU there. And we've got a little piece of plastic covering up the screen. All right, any questions? Pretty straightforward install, I think. This is going to look great. Who knew a hot dog could be so healthy? Stealth Mode said, that looks 5x5, Carey. Right on. I agree. I think it looks pretty good. There's our friend Madi in the chat with a $20 super chat. He says, hey, bro. Welcome in, Madi. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you for supporting the channel, as always. Yeah, so some conversation if the fans are RGB. The RGB on this case is so over the top, and it's well covered in the front, that I don't need to see those fans. If I had RGB fans, the problem is I'd need to blow air essentially to see the RGB. The RGB is typically on the side of the fan that's bringing the air in. So if the fans were inside of the case, blowing air out, that's not the direction of the airflow that I want. Furthermore, I don't think this case is going to be short of any RGB, since our rear case fan that came with the case is RGB, and the front of the case is very RGB. Just go back and look at the 2 previous videos where I show this case off. On top of that, we've got RGB on the RAM. So for those reasons, I wanted non-RGB fans, with the idea being that I would place the fans behind the front bezel to blow air into the case instead of out of the case. And if those were RGB, how would you see them? Marsman wants to know, why is there plastic covering on the bottom of a cooler? That should be on the bottom of every cooler you ever buy, and that's to keep any foreign material, dust, oil from your skin from contaminating this heat transfer area of the heatsink. And that's true of all heat sinks, liquid coolers, air coolers, universally. They all will have a piece of plastic or a plastic cover to keep it free of contamination. Any sort of contamination impedes the ability of the thermal compound to perform effectively. In the real world, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but some people are messier than others. So you want to keep that plastic or cover on until you're ready to mount the heatsink. That's why you just saw me clean the top of the CPU with a Q-tip and rubbing alcohol. And we just want the 2 surfaces that are going to mate together with the thermal compound to be free of contamination. And again, that includes dust, dirt, grease, fingerprints, oils from your skin, etc. All of those impede the cooling performance of the thermal compound. Steve wants to know, is the front bezel going to fit with the fans in place? I think so. I hadn't really thought about it, but now that you've asked, probably a good thing that we just double check while we can. First of all, we need to go ahead and route these cables out of our way. So I'm going to route the cables right here. These are cable management holes in the front here. Wow, these are very long cables. Why does Thermaltake give us a 4-foot long cable? Well, you're going to be doing some cable management for sure. I suppose if you had a really super tall case, this would be the cooler you'd want. So I'm going to go ahead and feed that cable through that management hole. And this cable through the other. Like so. And now we can put the front bezel back on. You can see that front bezel is pretty darn thick. So I don't think we're going to have a problem, but until you try it, you can't be too overconfident. Is it going to fit? Looks like it's going to fit fine. Yeah, I'd say it fits. What do you think? Looks good to me. And of course, with all these vent holes, the fans will be able to pull air in easily. There's no restriction there. Yeah, looks good. Fair question. I was assuming, in that case, I assumed correctly. How often does that happen? 50-50? I think I need a cold Gatorade, though. This one's getting a little warm. What graphics card should I put in here? 4090? I don't know. I'm just building it for the channel. It doesn't really have a home. I've got like a 960 I could throw in there too. It's got RGB on it. Should I go for the RGB?
Nice. So if you're going to do that and put a 4090 in there, it's got to have a really.
Do I have a 4090? Oh, it's not. It's a 3090 Ti.
Perfect.
Brand new in a box. It's too big. Now I got to take it out of the box first. Oh, this is heavy. Why is it so heavy? Let me just put this down somewhere. I don't need it yet. Because I'm thinking, I got this the Zotac Gaming that's got RGB on it. And I think that's going to look better, even if it's not as good of a graphics card. It was good in its day, though. But with the RGB on there, I think...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Might just go this route.
Yeah.
Because I think the CPU will probably bottleneck that 3090 Ti. And this is a Zotac Gaming GeForce RTX. What model is this? Well, if it's an RTX, it's not that old. Oh, it's a 2080 Ti. That's perfect. Oh, that's absolutely perfect for this build. So yeah, there's our GPU right there. And it's black and white.
Yep.
Awesome. It's all coming in. This is a good day today. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm starting to want it.
Of course you do. And then when you have this hot dog,
I'm waiting for the cougar.
that's what I was going to say. I'll have the robot's
I have
foot.
a 4090 sitting there waiting.
Do you know how much that CPU is selling for right now? That 13900 KS that we've got in, well, I haven't put it in the robot's foot yet. $850. I think I paid 600 and change, but apparently there's a shortage, and so the price is jacked up. It's not very common that you can buy computer parts that go up in value over time, but sometimes it happens. Mark Gain says, that's a beast of a GPU. Yeah, they're both really good. Stealth Mode says he turns off all his RGB when he games. He finds it too distracting. Is that blasphemy?
That is blasphemous.
Tom Long says, any day you get up is a good day. I don't know. If I didn't get up, I wouldn't know any better. Seems like it'd be a good day that way, too. Ignorance is bliss, isn't it? Might be a bad day for everybody that's got to move your body, but for the individual, probably not so bad. Okay, I need to put some thermal compound. Do I want to use the enclosed? Yeah, let's use what Thermaltake gave us. I use a nitrile glove. Nitrile glove. These are non-sterile, powder-free, and I get them really super thin so I can, get some feeling there. Now, for those of you who want to save money, as I mentioned before, you can get these for free out of the dumpster behind any proctologist's office.
Don't do that.
No, typically 4 of the fingers are clean still. Typically.
Yikes.
Just, yeah, that's a clean one. So, means people go to some extremes to save money, and
Oh my God. Your mind is going to some weird places.
the dumpster behind a proctologist's office is not a weird place.
No, just the fact that you went there with your mind.
Oh, my mind's been there the whole time. Okay, well, first of all, Thermaltake doesn't give us much in the way of thermal compound. I have used this entire tube, and it's barely, I think it's just enough, and that tube is completely emptied now. So there's no room for mistake on there. The good news is thermal compound is mostly all the same. Well, you don't want to mix 2 thermal compounds from different manufacturers. If you find that you don't have enough, it's no big deal to clean it up and just reapply a different brand. Like I have that Noctua NH1 thermal compound from Amazon that's like $8 or $9 a tube. It's really cheap. I am not at all happy with this thermal compound. It is sparse, and it's a little dry, and there's just not going to be good coverage there. So I'm going to follow my own advice. We're going to take that thermal compound off Lucky for me, though, the proctologist's office isn't far away, so that I can just use another glove. So to wipe up the bulk of the thermal compound, I usually just grab a paper towel. And that stuff is very, very dry. I think that's been on the warehouse shelf for a while. I suspect it wasn't that way when they shipped it. And then I'll grab a Q-tip and rub the alcohol again and just get up the residue and then apply the thermal compound the right way. Thermaltake was doing such a good job so far in this whole process. What a shame they let me down with the stinginess of providing us enough thermal compound to cover the CPU, let alone that it was apparently old. At least they could have done is given us twice as much thermal compound. There was clearly room in that tube for a lot more than they gave us. And this is a brand new, this isn't a returned item. This was brand new, this cooler. Bruce Lucas says, Carey, in George Takei's voice, oh my. Hello, I'm George Takei. Oh my. And why did George Takei get famous for saying that? Because of Howard Stern. That's where that came from. Very first time George Takei met Howard Stern. All right, I'm going to just do one more Q-tip here. There's not much residue on it. I'm going to just be overly thorough. Forbin says we should name the hot dog La Reine Blanche. It means the white queen.
I like that.
Sounds French. The Surrender Queen? Sorry, I was thinking about World War II. All right, that's good enough. I'm going to do this one more time. This time I'll get out the Noctua NTH1? Where's my glasses? Yeah, NTH1 thermal paste. And I got a full tube here, so put on an estimate of what I think I need, which was more than was in the tube Thermaltake gave us. They got thermal right in their name. Should be swimming in thermal compound, not being stingy with it, especially on a $200 cooler. It wasn't cheap. All right, so if you're going to buy this cooler, be sure and buy a tube of thermal compound if you don't have one, because they won't give you enough, and it might be super old. Just do a little finger painting here. Make sure we have 100% even coverage across the entire surface of the heat spreader on top of the CPU. That's the way I do it. I don't listen to the way other people do it, because those other people don't have to support what I sell. They're not taking my customers' calls, so they can do it however they want to. All right, that's good. And then I'll take this plastic protection off, so we have our beautiful, clean. Well, it's supposed to be clean. What is this goo? Looks like it's a little scuffed. And how was I going to put that on? Do you remember what direction was I putting this on? Was it with the tubes up? Or was the tubes this way? where's our USB cable gonna go? Oh, that whole piece turns. Beautiful. Beautiful. So that'll go on right like so. You'll notice I only put thermal compound on the CPU, not on the cooler. Now, if the cooler came with thermal compound pre-applied, then you wouldn't add any at all. You just simply make sure the surface of the CPU is clean. Yikes. This can be a bit of a trick, especially doing it with the machine vertical like this. As I mentioned, if you're doing this to your own system, I would recommend you lay the system flat and let gravity assist you instead of fighting against the gravity like I'm doing here. And all I want to do right now is start these thumb screws. I don't want to tighten them until I get all 4 of them on first, or the block might sit on an angle and not give us full CPU coverage. And that's really impossible to see once you've got the CPU covered like that. So when you tighten down a CPU cooler, you usually want to do opposite corners, just like if you're familiar with changing a tire on a car. You don't tighten them in a clockwise or counterclockwise. You do opposite sides one at a time. Oh, this looks fantastic. I like it. And that one is the most difficult one to get to. So I think I'm going to go ahead and tighten this one down until it stops. Go to the opposite corner. Tighten this one down until it stops. And then pick one of the 2 remaining. And then the last one. And just go around one more time. Sometimes when you tighten up screws on opposite sides, it kind of moves, and what you thought was previously tight is no longer tight. That's very common. And then we've got our USB cable here. And I'm kind of confused as to what's going on with this. Why do I have 2? So we have the USB cable, a USB header that goes on the motherboard, and then it terminates to a USB, micro USB. So clearly one of these goes to the block. But where does the other one go? That is the question. The fan header will plug in right here. That's going to provide power to our block, and we can deal with that cable management a bit later. Where does the other USB header go? We'll feed that out through here. And then as far as our fans go, these are our 2 front fans that we just installed. If you're short on fan headers, it's actually a good idea to use the fan header to keep both fans running at the same speed. I'm just kind of curious if I want to run these to the top or to the bottom. I've got 4 fan connectors here on the bottom. I think for now, and I might change this later, I'm just going to run these to each one to its own fan header down here at the bottom of the case. How do I want to route these wires? I think I want to do it like this. Yeah. That's the way. I like it. Drop that down there. Drop that one down there. Then we have our extra USB header right there, which I need for the end of this USB cable that we plugged in one part to the water block. And I'm going to run that right over to here. So, does that make any sense? Yeah, that makes sense to do it that way. This only goes on one way. One pin is blocked. That's going to be the upper left side. So that goes on this way. There we go. Look at that. All right, I just want to figure out where that other cable's supposed to go. And then we can fire it up and torture it, see if it gets hot. It shouldn't anymore. Let's see, so all of these are extra parts that we don't use for this build, but we will keep them together in case it gets changed in the future. Take a quick look at the directions. Yeah, we did all that. Did all that. Thermaltake.com/downloads is where we'll go for the software. I don't see him talking about the USB cable installation at all. This is just the mounting of the water block for various CPU sockets. What is the other USB port for? Am I missing something? The pump should have its own header so it can be set to a constant speed. Oh, that's a good point. I don't know if this has, I mean, we can go into the BIOS and set the header to be an all-in-one pump, I'm sure. Sometimes motherboards have an all-in-one header, specifically for that reason. It won't alter the voltage to slow the fan down. The pump runs at full speed at all times. I'll have to go into the BIOS and look. I don't see an all-in-one header on this board being offered, or I'm just not seeing it. But I'm glad you brought it up because we will make that change in the BIOS. Okay. Still trying to figure out where this other USB cable goes. I'm assuming they gave us two for a reason. Well, I suppose I'll just hook it up and see what happens. How about that? Hot dog no more. we're going to keep it on built-in video for right now, just to make sure everything's working like it should before we add other potential parts that we don't have to test right now. If things don't work, it's more to diagnose, so we keep it to a bare minimum on our first boot. I need a keyboard and a mouse, and I need the VGA. I need the HDMI cable. All my cables are tangled. There we go. Just like that. Keyboard and a mouse I've got right over here. Oh, this is getting exciting. Are you excited?
I'm excited.
Just plug that in up here. Okay, shall we see what happens when we turn it on?
Go for it.
Are you ready for the smoke test?
I want the magic smoke out.
Magic smoke. Let me turn on the HDMI input and let me take camera 1 and put me in a corner here. Good enough. Let's turn this on. Did the water block light up? Let me go into the BIOS. What does that look like? Oh yeah. Hey, that's pretty cool. You should grab the close-up camera.
Okay.
You ready? Come on over.
Ready.
Pretty neat, huh? And I like how that reach in here. Rotate that around. See, it's got a lot of RGB going on. It's not like it's going to be missing out on some RGB with RGB fans on the radiator. All right, that's good. That's all I wanted to show. All right, so back to the BIOS.
Clear?
Yeah, we're clear. I am going to take a look in here for fans, settings, favorites. All right, it's going to make me dig for it. It's not in there. Should we turn XMP on? What else? Platform power. No. I/O ports. Acoustic noise settings. That's an interesting feature. That has to do with the fans, I'm sure. Model name, BIOS version, Q flash, boot. Huh. I know it's in here somewhere. It's not going to be memory timings. Voltage settings. Let's try easy mode, F2, maybe the fans. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we'll go to CPU fan, and we'll set the fan profile to be an all-in-one cooler. Yeah, see, SysFan 4 is supposed to be a pump, but I don't know that that cable, that fan cable, will reach all the way to the bottom of the board where System Fan 4 is located. So instead, we should be able to just configure CPU fan to be fan control. I don't care about that. Fan stop is disabled. Good, good, good. Fan mode is sloping. Fan speed, full speed. That's what we want on the CPU fan. And those are the only changes we need to make, so we'll hit F10, save and exit, yes. So that turned on the XMP and enabled the full speed fan at all times on the CPU fan header only. Chris Johnson said F6 is the smart fan mode. Okay, well, good to know. Now, because I turned on XMP, it's retraining the memory, so that initial boot time is going to take just a couple moments longer. And we need the software. So I will grab an Ethernet cable so we can plug it into the internet and visit Thermaltake's site and download the Thermaltake software. Oh, I already did plug it into the internet. Okay. ALSEYE. What is this? Oh, this was for the CPU cooler that used to be in it. Let's get that software out of there. Under apps. Does it say ALSEYE up here? Yeah. Let's get rid of that, because that's for that piece of junk cooler I took off. That's gone. And then let's visit thermaltake.com/downloads. Where's it download? Which one is it? Downloads. www.thermaltake.com/downloads. Nothing's happening. Do I have to put www in front of it? Apparently I do. Drivers and software, okay. Proceed to the USA site. thermaltakeusa.com. I see. Drivers and software. Search by product name. This is called the Tough Liquid Ultra 240. TTRG, Tough Liquid All-in-One Liquid Cooler. This is the manual. Oh, well, there's the directions. I don't want the manual, I want the software. I guess we need this software right here, version 2.12. Give that a clicky-roo. Then that's going to download right up in this top right corner. And while we're waiting, do you guys have any questions for me yet? Dwayne wants to know if I should have loaded the BIOS defaults first. We did that when we prepped the motherboard a few videos back. Of course, it doesn't hurt to do it again if you forget where you've set things. But I didn't do any customizations to the BIOS, so it was already at BIOS defaults. But again, if you're uncertain, there's no harm in going back and setting up those defaults. System's real quiet. 372 of you are watching live around the world right now, and I hope, if you haven't, you will jump into the chat room and say hello. All we ask is that you're nice. And if you say hello, even if you're shy or socially awkward, this is a community that accepts you. But if you don't participate in it, we don't know you're out there. So please give a moment to just pop into the chat room and say hello. We'd love to see who's watching. And there's Jason Thomas saying hello. David Graham says hello. Essential Working Too Hard says hello, as does Charles Eslick and Thomas Backenstow. Michael Dane wants me to check my email. Okay, Michael, I will do just that. Looking at the email, I have one new message. Michael Dane sent $10. He says, this is for your Gatorade supply. Hey, right on time, Michael. I'm going to have to go get some more Gatorade here very soon. Thank you so much for your generosity and your support of the channel. And did this download yet? It did, so I'll click open. Oh, wrong mouse, Carey. Come over here. Lost it. Let's go to downloads. Let's open that. Double clicky. I don't even need to extract it, it's just one file. So we can just double click on it, begin our installation. And while that's loading, we can close everything else. I guess I could grab the manual to see if it talks about where that other USB cable goes or why it's there. If I click on this, I know it's going to load. I want to save it. Save. And we'll grab this one and save it as well. We'll get back to that in a little bit. That's all been done. Close and finish. Oh, that's annoying. We'll allow access. Minimize that. Close that. Turn off the search bar. So I suspect here we go. This whole thing about not detecting a controller. Oh, that's if you have RGB fans. Maybe that's what the other USB cable's for. Interesting. I'm guessing at this point. And we can check our temperature here. What if I want to change that to my logo? Let me grab a flash drive here and go over to the streaming computer and copy that logo. So the logo was made by a viewer named Selden Bell. Sometimes you'll see Selden in the chat room. I don't know, is he in there today? And then I will go to, where did I put the spinning logo at? I'm not exactly sure. I've got to search the files on the streaming computer to see where I placed it. It should be under my pictures folder, I think. Don't mind me while I'm trying to find that logo file. There it is. Yeah, it is in my pictures folder. Look at me being all organized and stuff. Let me copy that to a flash drive. That's done. And then I'm going to take that flash drive and I'm going to plug it into the system we just built here. Find a USB port to plug this into. This one ought to do nicely. And let's see, we'll go full screen so I can see. That's the file I want. I'm going to cut that, go into pictures and paste it. Then, let's see, sensors, fan speed, lighting. Where do I? Should be able to load a picture here somewhere. Yeah, I don't know why I keep clicking on that tab. I'm not interested in that. Oh, it notices we have G.Skill RAM. I think we can control the RGB of the G.Skill through this. Is that how that works? Fan speed, wattage, frequency, sensors. Should be under lighting. These are different displays, I guess we can put up there. How about a clock? What if we just make the center of the cooler a clock? What if I want a custom image? There should be a way for me to pick a custom image here. RAM load, CPU load, carousel. Oh, let's have it do it all. Take all of it and just let it rotate those. Apply. Yeah, see how it's cycling now? All right, as for picture, custom picture. Five gigahertz. 1.21 gigawatts. We can name the profile, we have different profiles. Auto update I want on, good. Standby screen. Set as boot animation, upload. Whoa. Try and get that in the middle. Apply. Standby screen. Oh, I guess that can only be a JPEG, not a GIF. General. Interesting. Now, how do I change it here? GPU temp, weather, clock. Oh, weather, that's what I want to be displayed. I don't have any Razer devices, so I guess that doesn't do me any good. Sound would be the Realtek card. No apply here, we just what, hit the X. All right, so if you're wondering what does this look like, turn on camera 1, and we'll go full screen over here on camera 1. Pretty good. CPUCOOL says at the top of that menu you'll see the option to upload a file. So let me go back there and look again. Guess I'm done with the flash drive, so I'll put that back. Group profile. think it would be in here. Upload file, there it is. Oh, we've got some images already there we can use. I'll hit upload. And I don't get a menu of what, oh, I said open. Oh, that's interesting. We'll go over to pictures, to my logo, center that the way we want it to appear. And hit OK. Why isn't it showing it up here though? There it is. All right. So now, you want to grab the close-up camera for me?
Sure.
Look at that. Look at that. Now we're cooking with gas. Not bad for a hot dog. Well, it started as a hot dog. All right, let's get the cam girl with the close-up camera.
Ready?
Go ahead, start moving in. Huh? What do you think of that? I would say that is pretty acceptable. And it's quiet. And it looks good. So take a couple steps back. And it looks like that cube is kind of floating there. Here, let's cut the lights. How you like that?
Now you gotta test the cooler.
Well, yeah, we could run Prime 95, but I think I want to put a graphics card in. It can't be a gaming PC without a graphics card, now can it?
Can you test the cooler before?
Nah, the cooler's going to be great. I already know it's going to be great. All right, you can go ahead and step aside. Thank you. You can shut that camera off and save its batteries. And I'm going to shut the computer down. Should be able to close that window. And we'll choose to shut down the computer. And in just a minute, that should power off. There it goes. Oh, that's what they mean by standby. You can have the image stay on the liquid block. That's why it's not a. That's why it only allowed a JPEG and not a movable GIF, an animated GIF. So you can put a static image on there. So when you shut your computer off, it's going to stay lit up. That's interesting. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to cut power on the back of the power supply here. That will shut that screen off, because I don't want to put the video card in while there's power. And we're going to need a power cable to power the graphics card as well. So I suppose, let's see, what do I want to do first? Come around here. And we're going to need these two slots, I think, is what we want here. So we'll take out that PCI bay cover, insert our graphics card. Oh, the hoses and the VGA cables are, the VGA cables. That's twice I've said VGA today. When's the last time I've used VGA? The front port USB-C or USB 3, one of each. It is the USB-C headers right there, right up against our graphics card. Put that in there, like so. And the other screw I think I placed in the box. Let me just verify I have the other. Should be in here. It is. And I'll put this other PCI slot cover back in there. Yeah, the only thing I think would make this better is having that extension cable so we can put the GPU in vertically. So that'll be my mission, is to try and find, unless one of you guys can find it for me, the compatible GPU extension for the ALSEYE case I've got here. Because something's going to mount somehow to this plastic piece right here. And then we can put the video card in vertically, which I think would be cool. That's why these two slots are here. And it's a 2-slot graphics card. And it looks like I need to kind of tilt it down a little bit, or I'm going to have trouble getting the cables in. Let me just make sure I can get the cable in there. And then tighten it back up. Like so. Perfect. I need 2 8-pin power cables. This is a power-hungry GPU. So back at the bag of power cables. Perfect. That's the first one I pulled out. It's the first one I need. Should be the only one I need, for that matter. Come around here, and I'm going to plug in both of these. I'll start with that one right there, and then we'll go over to this one right over here. Oh, thank goodness my AC is turned back on. Okay, and then this is just going to plug into the back of the power supply. And we can run that right through a shortcut right there, right to the back of our power supply. Super easy. All it takes is a whole boatload of money. Which is ironic, because it started off as a cheap hot dog, and that's usually what happens. Okay, we ready to turn it back on? Ooh. Flip our switch, hit our power button, and let's go back over to our HDMI input. Ooh, that got a lot louder. Okay, right now it says no signal. I hope it gives us a signal soon. It's taking an awfully long time. Fan is slowing down. There's our post screen. And then I'm going to have to download the NVIDIA driver. It's alive! Alive! All right. Full screen. Now we're in this really low res mode because it's going to be loading the GPU driver in the background. And while it's doing that, I'm going to go to nvidia.com. I'm going to click on they don't really make the page very friendly here for low res drivers. Haha. GeForce RTX 20 series, 2080 Ti, Windows 10, game ready driver, search, download, and one more time on the download button. There it is. And then we should see that in the upper right when it starts to download that. So we're actually downloading the driver from Windows Update in the background. And we're going to be downloading the latest driver direct from NVIDIA, which is 854 megs. So while that's processing, we're going to go back to camera 1. And for some reason, my picture didn't load. I'll have to look into that. And I'll turn out the lights so you can get the full effect. Look at that graphics card light up the entire bottom of the case. See what I mean when I said I didn't need RGB fans? Like this is RGB'd out. And it's bright RGB. And then there's a button up here I can press to cycle through. If we want to match the green. It's very bright. Wish I could dim it. It is no longer a hot dog. Then I can load the G.Skill RGB software to control the RGB on that RAM as well. And if I hold the RGB button down on the top of the case, it'll shut the front and rear RGB off. But of course, our RGB RAM will always be lit. Our liquid cooler screen is on. And then the RGB on the graphics card, if it's controllable, it'll be through NVIDIA's software. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Depends on the make and model of graphics card you've got. And, you know, in a bedroom at night, this could still be pretty bright. You can also see the motherboard has RGB underneath of the board on the right side where the power connector for the power supply is plugging into the board. To the right of the, well, if you're watching the video, yeah, it'll be to your right. You'll see that the RGB to the right of the RAM, that's coming from the bottom of the motherboard. And we can control that with Gigabyte's RGB software. Now, I am still puzzled why my logo didn't load. So there must be a box I didn't check somewhere. Let's see. Minimize that. Bring up this. Yes. My PC. Lighting. Upload file. Why didn't it do that automatically? Well, it's got my logo on it now. And the screen is so big because, you know, we don't have the video driver installed. We're just running a generic video driver, and so the resolution is going to be super low on that. All right, that's going to be about 9 minutes. So as we're waiting for that, I'll go back over to camera 1. There we go. When I hit the RGB lighting button on the top of the case, you'll see our rear case fan has RGB. That came with the case. And of course the front. Just a lot of RGB. So do you like it?
I do.
You want it?
Yeah.
You're hesitating.
No, well,
Too bad you can't have it. All right, let me just bring up the lights again. All this will go in the motherboard box. Not exactly a mini PC. Jason Wyrick says it looks nice if you like Fisher Price. Tonka. I'm going to grab another Gatorade. This one's getting warm. I just don't drink them fast enough. So what started out is a horrible build which was cheap, is now a very respectable 13600K with an RTX 2080 Ti GPU. We've got 32 gigs of G.SkillTridentZRoyalSeries RAM. Frank says he'd rather have the mini computer from yesterday. Hey, that mini computer is super nice. I saw Jay's 2 Cents did a video where they sell, and I don't know why anybody would do this, but they sell an adapter that plugs into the M.2. So you take your M.2 drive out of your mini PC and you plug this M.2 adapter into it, and it has a ribbon cable that goes to a PCI Express card to plug a graphics card in. Then you plug in a regular SATA drive to be your operating system boot drive, since you can't use the M.2 anymore. And since the M.2 is tied directly into the PCIe bus, by converting it to PCIe, you put a GPU in there. Then you need a separate power supply to power the GPU. So there's all this is wide open, static nightmare, super easy to damage. But it does actually, you load your Windows 10 or 11 onto your SATA drive. You load your video card drivers, which it will see now through the M.2 slot. And you've got a gaming PC just with a bunch of parts and wires exposed that's extraordinarily expensive and dangerous and dumb.
And complicated.
And that little adapter to go from M.2 into a PCI Express slot is like $65. And you're only going at by 4, whereas a normal PCI Express slot is by 16. So you don't want to go too high on your graphics card since you've got that bottleneck. But the fact that somebody makes that and the fact that somebody would do that, what a complete waste of time and money. And it's dangerous. I would have never thought to do that. So if you're interested in how that's done, you can check out Jay's 2 Cents channel. David wants to know if he can cool a 13700K with a Noctua U12A. Probably not. I mean, it'll work fine under normal load, but the minute you start pushing that CPU hard, like, would it run Prime 95 for 20 minutes without overheating? Probably not. But if you never put that heavy of a load on a CPU for that period of time, then it would probably be okay. So it depends on how you use the computer. All right, how are we doing over here on the download? Almost done with our video driver download. Dave wants to know if I had a chance to try a 4 terabyte drive in the minis forum. No, I will do that though. There's some discussion as to whether or not the 2 terabyte limit of the M.2 storage on the mini PCs is still accurate. And I have a spare 4 terabyte NVMe for that purpose. It's super easy to test. I'll do that later in the week. VR says the system would really look nice as a streamer in the background. I think the one I've got now looks better, but yeah, I suppose. Let's see. Looks like our download is almost done. There it is. Click to open the file. Close that. The video cannot be played. Please install the lav decoder. Don't know what that's all about. Can't read that. Start RGB Plus on Windows Startup. Okay. close that. And let's go to the download directory. Double click that. Yes. Okay. Let's get our driver installed. Then, once we get the driver installed, we'll reboot, and then I will load the Prime 95, start that test, and see how it fares this time, which should be a walk in the park. Anything else is unacceptable. Dave says that's the thing that's stopping him from buying one of those mini PCs, is he doesn't have room for external storage units. I can tell you that there's not a big priority from the manufacturers to include 4 terabyte compatibility, because the people who are buying the mini PCs are typically doing it because their price. So to potentially spend as more or as much as the mini PC costs just on a 4 terabyte drive is very unusual. It's not a high demand item from consumers. So I won't be surprised if it doesn't support 4 terabyte and why that would not be a priority. Not only that, it sounds like you're not making backups if you don't have room for an external drive. I mean, an external drive is 2.5 inches. I don't know how you're backing up 4 terabytes of data, but that's your business. Let me go back over here. I'm still curious just the same if it will accept the 4 terabyte drive. They say it's 2 terabyte limit, and they might be right, but until we test it, sometimes it's just a BIOS update that changes that. And often when they update the BIOSes, they don't go back. Most manufacturers do not go back and update the documentation. Okay, let's run, let's see, HW info. We're going to bring that up. And then let's run Prime 95 and hit OK and start that. .1 gigahertz. That's crazy. There's our temps. And let me start my timer so we can let that run. Whew, you can really hear those fans crank up. There we go. Oh man. Only 64 degrees Celsius is as hot as this has gotten yet. So we'll let that run. And while we're waiting, if you have any questions for me, I'll do my best to provide answers, and also watch the chat room, because participants there also may have answers, in some cases, better answers than mine. Gary's providing a link to a cable. He says, I'm not sure if it's compatible, but they're pretty standard. They're not standard. I've purchased 4 of them. None of them are the same, and none of them fit. So that's why it's got to be compatible. They're not all the same. I wish there was a standard. David Rivera says Best Buy has the Samsung 980 Pro 2 terabyte internal M.2 NVMe Gen 4 drive for $139.99. It's a great price. You wanted to look up the USB cable. No, I think we identified that's for RGB fans, I think. Well, we got all the way up to 70 degrees Celsius. That's the max temp we've hit. haven't quite been 2 minutes. You can definitely hear the fans turning. I think that's the rear case fan making all that noise. Yeah, no, the front fans are making a good amount of sound too there as it's pushing air through that radiator. As the CPU is getting hotter, fans intensify in order to generate more airflow to bring that temperature down. We're just crossed over the 2.5 minute mark here, so we're going to let this run for 20 minutes, or if it exceeds 85 degrees, which I'm pretty sure it's never going to do. Feral Sparky jumps in the chat and says, hello. Where1 mentions the Intel driver assistant has an orange dot. That'll probably be for the built-in Intel video driver, which we're not using right now, so that's not important. Don't let that bother you. Nev would like to know how much power this computer is using. Well, it's LED, so it's probably not pulling much, but I do have the kilowatt meter, which I could plug in, and we can evaluate our power consumption. Just have to remind me of that after this test is done. Shamim says, another cool build, Carey. The only drawback I see from mini PCs is their limitation for storage. A gaming PC requires a lot of storage. Yeah, but the problem, as I mentioned, is not many people are buying 4 terabyte NVMe drives. If you look at the statistics, the sales numbers, the majority of people are buying the cheapest thing. They're not necessarily buying the best or the largest or the fastest. So that's sort of an enthusiast mindset, and I'm afraid that the enthusiast community is slowly being pushed out by manufacturers, especially as sales numbers are dropping. So while there's a lot of money to be made in the enthusiast community, it's not what it used to be, and the manufacturers are going to follow the sales. So I think in the next 2 to 3 years, things like cooling solutions for overclocking and RGB options, I think that's all going to start to become sort of a standard commodity. And the niche items that the enthusiasts are into, I think their options are going to become fewer and fewer. I could be wrong, but it looks like that's the way the market is moving. Dennis Paulson says, I see an 8K HDMI cable for sale. What's the point of 8K? Some people have 8K televisions. Some people can create 8K content right here on YouTube. Does YouTube offer that yet? And that's the next step from 4K. 8K TVs are currently on sale wherever you buy a TV. Some people want that. Some people don't. What you don't see value in, somebody else might. So to each their own. Winston Liu is now a member for 11 months, right on. Winston says, Carey, I bought a B-Link AMD Ryzen 5 with 512 megs of RAM with Windows 10 Pro, and it works well. Right on. I'd love to hear back from people that are buying these mini PCs and just share with me what it's like to live with. If there's things you see room for improvement, or if there's areas where it's beneficial that you hadn't considered until you started living with one. Did I run Crystal Dismark? I did run it the other day, and I saved the results right over here. Oh, wrong mouse, Carey. Right over here. Those are, no, that was the, sorry, that was a different NVMe drive. That's not this one. What did that one come from? So I initially, oh, so those numbers were from, I think they were from the, is that from the ERYING room? No, I think this motherboard had the ADATA drive in it at first, and I swapped it out for the Samsung 980. I mean, we can run the benchmark at the same time. We're just going to torture the computer that much more. Why not? I never do this, but that gives me more reason to do it. it's not really a fair test because the CPU and RAM are getting hammered right now. I think that number is be closer to 7,000 if we weren't multitasking. Am I covering that up? Oh, wrong mouse again, Carey. Drop it down here. Our test has been running for 7.5 minutes. The hottest the CPU has become is 74 degrees Celsius. It's running much, much better. Much, much better. Shamim Keshvaras contributes 50 Swedish krona. He says, because of the time difference, sometimes I have to watch your videos after they air live, but I do watch them all. And here is a small contribution. Thank you, Carey. Well, thank you, Shamim. Thank you for supporting the channel. Luke Greenia says, I almost forgot I have a mini PC. It's mounted behind the television. The Ace Magician CK10 with the i7 is awesome. Good to know. Love to hear the feedback, positive or negative, just as long as it's genuine. VR wants to know, do you think you'd still be making videos if you never started streaming? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Videos are videos, regardless if I'm doing them in a traditional way of filming and then editing and posting, or if I'm live streaming. One way or the other, I'd still be making videos for sure. Because I'm here to teach. It doesn't matter if that's being done live or if it's pre-recorded. The motivation for why I do it doesn't change the motivation. But by live streaming it, I can create more content more often. And I also like to interact with the viewers. And in the comments, it's just not the same. You know, to be able to interact while I'm live certainly adds a little something extra to the videos that I personally like, but it's not the reason why I make them, and it wouldn't be the reason why I would stop. David Rivera says, I recommend Uncle Carey's Windows 10 Optimizer. I got it yesterday. Easy install. Installed it on my gaming PC and my wife's PC as well. Right on. Well, I appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate your supporting the channel. William Gale says, it's always good to catch up on the videos when, due to the time difference, I can relax with a cup of tea and watch Carey work and teach. Wonderful. Glad you're enjoying the content. Yeah, I know that write speed is not accurate. So we are just hammering the heck out of this computer right now. So what are we hitting? 77 degrees Celsius after 10.5 minutes of this torture test. And we'll let the test run up to 20 minutes, maybe a little over 20 minutes, and see what maximum temp we hit.
You should change it back to the temperature.
Oh, on the front of it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, that's not a terrible idea. There's our good friend Marvin Jameson, also a supporter here for 11 months.
Hi, Marvin.
Let's see, where's my Thermaltake? Things are going to be a little less responsive while we're torturing the heck out of this machine. CPU temp. Okay. Marvin Jameson just contributed $20 via Super Chat. Hey, Marvin, thank you so much. We have 330 people watching us live right now around the world. I hope you'll pop in, if you haven't already, to the chat and just say hello. We'd love to see you say hello here in the chat. I know out of 330 people, there's fewer than 100 of them in the chat room. So there's plenty of room for others to pop in and just say hi. Adalonic Kit Creator says, awesome content. Thank you. Jose Del Nido says, hello, Uncle Carey. Greetings from Chile. Hello, Jose. Creeping up on 13 minutes of this torture test, and our CPUs are running really nice temperature here. Our maximum so far we've hit is 77. Currently, we're sitting right around 69, 70, bouncing around in that area. David Graham says the case manufacturer's website does not highlight the side mount. Half of the case images don't even show it, and they don't mention it. Yeah, hence why I asked if anybody was familiar with what was compatible. Stealth Mode said that CPU was in the tub having a margarita. Yeah, it's pretty chill. I mean, it's for as much as it's being tortured, and it's pretty locked in on that 5.1. That's an insane frequency. Remember, this is only an i5. Dan Cooper says, cool, it went from a hot dog to a smoky. Little smokies, those little cocktail wieners. It's a real wiener now. First place wiener. Johnny Wilt says 71, maybe that's Fahrenheit. No, 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 it's much hotter. Much hotter in Fahrenheit. The net number would, can you imagine if it was only 72 degrees Fahrenheit? Wow. No, you wouldn't want to touch that CPU with your fingers right now. It'll burn them. Kurt Schlegel with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Kurt. "15 minutes just crossed over on the test, and again, we have not exceeded 77 degrees Celsius. While we're waiting for the test to complete, this is a good time to ask your question. I'm just looking in the chat room for anything I can address. If you've asked something earlier that I did not address, it's because I haven't seen it, so do post it again. This is your time. Speak now or forever hold your peace. I did not know, honestly, when I started this project that it was going to turn into such an amazing computer. That was not my intent. My intent was to use it as a teaching lesson on why you shouldn't be buying cheap crap from AliExpress, and if you do, to set your expectations for misery. And it got the better of me when I realized the case, the power supply, and the cooler were ordered from Amazon, from a manufacturer, at least ALSEYE. I had worked with their coolers before, and it was crap. So I figured, oh, I'll order it from ALSEYE because they, they make crap. I didn't expect the case to be as good as it is. The cooler from ALSEYE is crap, just as I suspected. And the GainMax power supply, I'd never heard of it, so I didn't really have a preconceived concept in my mind of whether or not it was crap, other than it was inexpensive, modular, and it was like 850 watts. And for the price, it wasn't cheap, but it was compared to other modular 850 watt power supplies, and it matched the white color. Because that's often how consumers will buy. They'll buy based on how it looks. Cheap, price, and looks good are very, very common for end users to shop like that. So I said, well, here's what you can expect if that's your mentality. Here's what the frustrations are, the lack of support, the length of time it takes parts to arrive from China, all of that combined. And I just couldn't stand it. I said, you know, it's really a decent case. It really is. And it's a decent power supply so far as I can tell. And we're so close to having a good machine. If all we do is get rid of that hot dog motherboard CPU combo from AliExpress, put a proper motherboard in there with a proper CPU, we have plenty of room. And with the case being as big as it is, I wanted an excuse to put a liquid cooler in it, because otherwise the case looks empty. So everything has worked itself out, completely unscripted, and all those parts I bought from AliExpress, $300 worth of parts, are a complete waste of money.
Forget the bonus GPU.
Bonus GPU?
Yeah.
What, the GPU I'm using now?
Yeah.
I think this GPU came out of Marvin Jamison's original computer re-hit. Those folks sold him 2 of them in bridge mode. I mean, it's an SLI.
But it looks good in that case.
It does, yeah. Yeah, and that just, again, I didn't know until I was live what was going to happen. Everything is unscripted. Everything is real. I never quite know what's going to happen until it happens. So that keeps it interesting for me. Oh, whoa, look at our CPU temp. Holy cow, 95, something's wrong. Wow, how many minutes are we? 18 and a half minutes in. Now, we only made it 17 minutes in. That is shocking. So it doesn't thermal throttle until 100. But I can't believe we've hit 95 with a liquid cooler. That doesn't seem right at all. That's very strange. Now, I'm going to let it continue to run because I suspect that it's going to cool back down. There's some test that Prime 95 was running that was really exercising the heck out of the CPU there. Holy cow. But no thermal throttle. We're still within operational range. And you really have to push the system hard for over 17 minutes to hit those temps. Now, we would have exceeded 100 with the air cooler. So at least we haven't exceeded 100, but I honestly didn't expect it was going to climb much higher than 77. So if you're going to buy a 13600K, I hope you're prepared to spend a lot of money on cooling it, at least if you plan to work the heck out of it. And we've crossed over the 20-minute mark. I'm going to let it continue here. I'm kind of curious. I think that temperature will drop back down into the 70s as the Prime 95 test moves on to another test. Some of the tests obviously are going to have temperature impact on the CPU, which is why I run the test as long as I do. It's not just repeating the same instructions over and over again. It's changing them up. And whatever instructions it's calculating now are really causing it to work. Wow. Holy cow. Maybe I need a 360 millimeter radiator for this bad boy, huh? Alan wants to know, how's the fan noise? Well, it sounds like fans are running.
Pretty loud.
Yeah, it's not vacuum cleaner loud, but it definitely has an industrial sound for sure. Now, most people would never push their system this hard for this long. It's a very unrealistic test. However, I know if it will survive this test, it will survive whatever anybody throws at it. So right now, we're right at the edge, all right? At 95 degrees Celsius, once it hits 100, it's going to throttle and start slowing down. And we can see it's starting to cool down now. We're down to 90. As Prime 95 moves on to other calculations, it's running on the CPU. Now, if I stop Prime 95, you'll notice the CPU temp is going to drop really quick. Let's bring up the Prime 95. So let's see, we're done with that. And I'm going to lower this down so you can see the temps drop. So when I hit the stop the test, I got to hit yes or okay here. Watch how fast our temperatures drop. Here we go. We're instantly 30 degrees cooler, 40 degrees cooler in seconds. And the fans have slowed down because they don't have to work as aggressively. And our temps are already almost split to half of what they were. So that's how fast a computer can get hot, and good cooling will bring that temp down pretty rapidly. All right. Is my cube not rotating? Let me go back over to that again, full screen so I can see it. Back over to the Thermaltake software. Lighting. Why is it not spinning? Do it again. Open. Load the GIF file. Center that. Hit OK. Hit apply. Maybe I need to reboot it. Let's do a reboot. Let's see how long this thing takes to restart. There's got to be something in the Thermaltake software that I'm missing. Oh, it hasn't loaded yet. There it goes. There it goes. Okay. Close that out. And where's my utilities? Plug that in here. PC testing software. Nick Caffrey says, Carey, watching you compulsively as I'm doing a new build this summer. You're the only place I go to for self-builds. Well, we're glad to have you here. Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. I hope you find the information helpful and save some money. LRCX has just reminded you about testing the power usage with the wattage meter. Okay, thank you for that. Thomas says you can change the color of the water block outer diameter by selecting a reading, CPU blue, temp red, etc. Cool, cool. Kevin Smith says that might be one of the cleanest builds I've seen you do in a while, Carey. Well, it helps when you have a case that's big enough, you know what I mean? Sometimes in most circumstances, it's the case that creates the crowded look or the messy look where they don't give you adequate space for things like cable management or, you know, even graphics cards. Things start to get crowded, and then of course it makes it look a little messier. Nick just posted in the chat, I think Nick is not watching current. I think he's a few moments behind. I think he's about 10 minutes behind in the video. So in about 10 minutes from now, Nick will probably hear me tell him he should refresh his browser or make sure that the progress bar below the video is all the way to the right, where you're responding to things that happened in the past. VR says, I hope this system finds a good home someday. You and me both.
It will.
You don't know that.
I do know that.
You don't know that.
I do know that.
I don't think you do. Michael Dane wants to know, what do computers do on a beach vacation? They surf the net. Maybe I should not have installed this from the flash drive. It's taking much longer. I didn't really. I should have copied the file locally and then installed it, but that's all right. Should be done here in just a moment. There it goes. Now I can hit finish. Let's see, 1920 by 1080. Okay. Hit launch. Cannot proceed. Well, what was that, a big waste of time? Must need something else installed for that to run, huh? Go back to the PC testing software folder. What else do I have in here? And then take Cinebench and drag that out too. Mitchell Morrison joins us. Mitch wants to know, did you hear about the curious zombie? He'd like to pick your brain. There's my friend Ron Hilliard joining us in the chat room. And we'll go ahead and run this demo just because we can, I suppose. My video is probably covering up all of the numbers because, of course, that's where the video would be, right? by not having the radiator on top of the case, that enables me to put stuff on top without worrying about blocking my airflow. So I have a habit of putting stuff on. But you can see the test finished. Very strange. Top of my computer. But oh, there's my video playing. All right, so let me go full screen here on camera 1. There we go, and hopefully everybody's back. ERYING must be getting revenge, says Michael Dane. Mitchell Morrison says, did you hear about the new squirrel diet? It's just nuts. Nothing like having a brand new build and having power fluctuation. I mean, that's really testing it. Maybe we draw so much power from this, it caused the grid to go down. That was weird. That never happens. And let's see. Never say never. Okay, so we're back. Let me go ahead and shut this down. Let's go back over here. Close that. Shut down. Back to camera 1. And here's my kilowatt meter. It literally killed a watt. Oh, I've got it under here somewhere. Where did it go? Where did I put it? It's supposed to be right under here. Why is it not in its spot? Oh, it's all the way in the back. So by plugging the computer into this meter, this will show us how many watts it's actually pulling. And these, Amazon sells these. They're about 20 bucks. It's called a kilowatt meter. And we'll just plug this into the surge protector, and the computer then will plug into here, and we'll see the power draw coming from what's plugged into it, which will be the computer in this case. So let's see, where do I have room on the surge protector for this beast? Oh, of course. Of course it wants to install that direction. All right, let me work this out here. I'm gonna go, can't go that way. Never go that way. That would have taken us straight to the castle. Ah, there, that'll work. And then we'll turn this back on. And then let me flip the meter. $120 volts, obviously, 60 hertz, obviously. Looks like we're pulling about 90 watts. It's bouncing around between 90 and 160, but I'm gonna have to get my glasses out because I can't see what what it's denoting. Okay, it's denoting wattage. So 88.7 right now. And if we run Prime 95, or you know what, we can run the benchmark on it again. Let me go back over to the HDMI input. And I have to go full screen so I can see it. What do I want to use to torture it? I'm wondering what I was missing here. Stress test? Oh, you got to pay for that. I see. Well, let's run it again. And let me put my camera back in the corner. And so while that's running, let me take a look over here at the kilowatt. It's pulling 410 watts right now. 410. That's a lot. 419, 412. Well, something's hungry. I'm going to guess it's that video card.
I was just gonna say that.
Although that's a 200 watt processor, so I think. Yeah, we're hovering right around 415. Yeah. It's definitely not the power saver those minis are.
Not at all.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's saying 419, 420. That's much higher than I would have expected. I would have thought 400 max. Yeah, we're exceeding 400.
No wonder the lights flickered.
Right? No, I don't think we did that. I think we would have blew a breaker if it was us.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's not its idle wattage. That's the wattage. If you're look, if you want to be a gamer and you want to play the latest AAA titles and, you know, high frame rates, all the bells, whistles, and features turned on, gaming is an expensive luxury. It's like being a fan of a muscle car. You're going to be pouring money into gasoline.
Small price to pay.
Comes with the territory. Yeah, it's pretty much locked in between 400 and 420 watts. I'm just checking my mail while we're waiting here. Lots of junk. There's our final score. So it's just now alerting me of the motion of you checking the mail. So the cameras went offline, and when they came back on, that beep was the alert of you from 10 minutes ago. Better late than never, I suppose. So the last piece of this, I suppose, is if you wanted to visualize what this would look like completed, right? So I still have cable management. Whoops, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. I still have the cable management to do on this side. Right? We have a bunch of cables that need to be managed, but we have plenty of room for cable management on this case. So if you pretend like that's done, and you want to know what's this going to look like complete, so I can just hang the door back on it, which goes on super easy. We'll align the hinges. That one. Yikes. Like that. And then, of course, the peel. Okay, I got a present for you. That's a terrible throw. All right, guys, we're right at 4 o'clock here, a little after, so that's a 3-hour build, 3-hour video today. I think that's a good place to put a stop to it. If there's any last questions, I'll answer them, but in the meantime, I will shout out another thank you to the people who contributed during today's live stream. And of course, our good friend Buster, Peter Laycock, a shout out to him as always. Happy retirement. Winston Liu, Kurt Schlegel, Marvin Jameson, Shamim Kajvaraz, Mari Yoel, Fatal Dragons, Alan Lindas, Xrod 666, our good friend Mark Gaines, Alvin Shaver, John Jack Wilson, Davis Parsons, who's now a member for 11 months. Thank you for continuing your membership. Ben Laird, joining us from Scotland. Planet Cryos, Dustin Fuller. And let me check my phone one last time. Michael Dane, thank you for your contribution. Mark Gaines, thank you for the Amazon gift card. And of course, the earlier payment from our good friend Peter Laycock. Did I get everybody? I hope I got everybody. Pretty fun little Friday build here, huh? And I'm not seeing any other questions here. Great. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. It was a lot of fun right up until the power started to go out. Not sure what that was all about. But as long as the air conditioning isn't broken, I'll be okay. And then I've got some cable management to do on this, but I think that's pretty good to go. I mean, that's no slouch. And the motherboard that's in there has built-in Wi-Fi. You see it's got the antenna posts right there. And, oh, I was going to take a look at the storage speed now that we've got the benchmarks finished. Let me run Crystal Disk Mark one last time here. Let's close that and bring up Crystal Disk Mark 64 and run it. That should give us some more accurate numbers. David wants to know if I observed performance loss on solid state drives that are full or close to it. Is that normal for all storage drives? Yes, mechanical drives and solid state storage drives. They do, it will result in Windows running slower. You should have 10% minimum of whatever your hard drive capacity is. 10% of your hard drive capacity should be available at all times so your swap file has room to grow as needed. Yes, that is normal for all storage drives. SSDs can be a little bit worse than mechanicals when it comes to when you have them nearly full. But again, 10% free at a minimum. I'd prefer to see 15% free of whatever your total capacity is at all times. Yes. And those numbers are much better already. So that's more like what I was expecting. Bruce Lucas says, thanks, Carey. Hey, back at you, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us. Luke Greenia says, thank you, Carey and Mara. Great stream as usual. Thank you, Luke. Thanks for joining us today, as always. Yeah, I got a little bit of cable management work ahead of me here, but it's not terrible. This case does make it a lot easier to do cable management, so I won't be dreading this process on this build. Stealth Mode says, Cam Girl, thank you. As always, like the movie Oblivion. Yes, we are a good team. Love the energy. Right on. Well, thank you. Winston Liu contributes $5.50 Canadian. Says, Carey, I would like the computer system link to $1 million CAE Boeing 777/400 pilot simulator that train, run, and control the system. I have no idea what you just said. Luke Slater says, thank you for the stream. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday and your Cinco de Mayo, and you have a safe, happy weekend. I did ask my sister about the status of the mouse pads. I do believe she's going to redesign the mouse pads for a limited run, and when those are sold out, that design will be retired. And then maybe she'll do another design after that. Hopefully I'll have an update in the next week or two in regards to that. That's over at careyholzman.com if you're interested. And yeah, there's the numbers I was pretty much looking at. Those numbers on the screen are the benchmark numbers I was expecting. We have 6,500 on the sequential writes and nearly 5,000 on the 6,500 on the sequential reads and nearly 5,000 on the sequential writes. So that is pretty much what I was expecting. And that again is the Samsung 980 Pro. That's the 2 terabyte drive. Overall, very fast system, an attractive looking system, and it's no longer a hot dog. Hallelujah. Wait for those final numbers here.
You still want to chew bubblegum though.
That RGB makes you want to chew bubblegum?
And the white cake.
Yeah, I don't understand that, but okay. I wish this was as cheap as bubblegum.
Right.
All right, there's our final numbers for those of you that are interested on that. Samsung 980 Pro, 2 terabyte model. And that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you, Camera Girl, for the camera work. Thank you for all the contributions and the interaction today from everybody in the chat room. And hello to everybody watching this video in the future. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.